During World War II, survival at sea was often, well, a cruel lottery. Thousands of airmen and sailors found themselves drifting in open water after ship sinkings or aircraft ditchings. For many, rescue took hours, sometimes even days. And, the threat wasn't only from exposure or dehydration. The sea itself, teeming with sharks, became a battlefield of its own. Yet, in this desperate fight for survival, military scientists developed a strange and little-known chemical compound that offered unexpected protection. It didn't kill sharks or harm the environment. It simply made men invisible to them. The invention was called Shark Chaser, and it became one of the most remarkable life-saving tools of the entire war. For decades, it was classified, misunderstood, or dismissed as rumour. But the real story of the World War II shark repellent reveals just how creative and determined wartime science could be when human survival was on the line. By 1942, reports of shark attacks on survivors began to worry Allied command. While many accounts were exaggerated, some incidents, like the sinking of the USS Indianapolis in 1945, proved that sharks could and did attack stranded servicemen. Fear alone was enough to lower morale among pilots flying long missions over the Pacific. The Navy needed a solution, not just for safety, but for psychology. The United States Navy turned to the Office of Strategic Services, the same agency that later evolved into the CIA, to create a deterrent. They enlisted the help of scientists from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and the Division of War Research. Their goal, you see, was to find a chemical compound that could repel sharks without harming the men or damaging their survival gear. What followed was a blend of chemistry, biology, and wartime urgency that, led to the discovery of a compound so effective it was packed into thousands of survival kits carried by downed pilots and shipwrecked sailors across the globe. The research began with observation. Scientists studied shark behaviour and noticed something unusual. Sharks avoided the carcasses of dead sharks. The team suspected that decomposing shark flesh released certain chemicals that signalled danger to other sharks. So they began isolating and testing these substances, experimenting with extracts from shark tissue and other marine compounds. Eventually, they identified two key ingredients that produced a strong aversion response in sharks' copper acetate and black dye. Copper acetate, which is a blue-green crystalline salt, created a chemical scent that mimicked the odour of decaying shark tissue. When mixed with the dye, it created a dark cloud in the water that both masked the survivor's silhouette and, quite importantly, chemically warned nearby sharks to stay away. The result was a powder known officially as Shark Chaser Compound 1. Each packet contained enough material to create a deterrent field around a person for several hours. It was packaged in small, watertight tins, designed to be opened and released into the water when needed. By 1943, Shark Chaser became a standard item in United States Navy and Army Air Force survival kits. Pilots carried it in their life vests, and sailors had it stored in their life rafts. The instructions were simple. Tear open the packet and let the contents disperse in the surrounding water. The shark chaser formula worked on two fronts, chemical and visual. The copper acetate gave off a scent that, well, resembled the natural warning chemicals sharks release when they're injured or dying. This tapped into a shark's survival instinct, signalling danger or, unpalatable prey. The dark dye, meanwhile, created a visual smoke screen in the water, making it harder for sharks to recognize human shapes or movement. While it wasn't a perfect shield, Navy testing confirmed that sharks consistently avoided the treated areas for up to 8 hours after deployment. The compound's non-toxic design meant it posed no danger to marine life beyond temporary aversion, and it could be safely stored for years without degradation. For soldiers stranded in open water, those extra hours often meant the difference between life and death. Perhaps even more significant was the psychological effect. Knowing they had some form of protection gave survivors hope, and that hope often translated into clearer thinking, better rationing, and stronger will to endure. After the Second World War came to a close, the shark chaser compound, it didn't just fade away. It remained in use during both the Korean and Vietnam Wars, albeit in updated forms. The United States Navy, they continued to include similar repellents in pilot emergency kits well into the 1970s. Research inspired by that original formula, it led to the modern shark repellents we see today. They're used in wetsuits, fishing gear, and even marine electronics. Interestingly enough, even NASA's ocean recovery teams, those folks tasked with retrieving astronauts after splashdowns, they carried shark repellent packets derived from the World War II formula. Quite fascinating, isn't it? It was one of those rare wartime inventions that transitioned seamlessly into peacetime applications, quietly saving lives long after the fighting ended. For survivalists and sea adventurers, the concept behind the Second World War shark repellent remains just as valuable now as it was 80 years ago. The principle, using chemical signaling rather than aggression, is the basis of modern shark deterrence. Today, similar compounds using copper-based formulas are available in the form of shark defense dyes or dissolving tablets. If you spend time on the water or dive in shark-prone regions, understanding how these repellents work can make all the difference. The key idea is to disrupt a shark's sensory perception rather than provoke it. This is a practical takeaway from wartime science. When facing nature's predators, deterrence through chemistry often works better than confrontation through force. For historical enthusiasts, reproducing the World War II process, whether for educational or museum purposes, can be done safely using non-toxic copper salts and food-grade dyes to demonstrate the science behind the original shark chaser. It's a tangible way to connect with the ingenuity of wartime scientists, those who understood that even a handful of powder could be a soldier's best chance at survival. The story of the World War II shark repellent reveals how science and necessity can come together in unexpected ways. It wasn't a grand weapon or a breakthrough in physics, it was a small packet that carried immense hope. For men lost at sea, it meant they could face the ocean with a fighting chance. You know, this invention also shows how wartime research often extends far beyond battlefields. The same creativity that produced radar and penicillin also birthed small, life-saving tools designed purely to protect life. You know, the fact that modern divers, rescue teams and even astronauts still benefit from that research just proves that the simplest wartime innovations often outlive the wars themselves. The World War II shark chaser stands as one of those rare wartime inventions that blended science, courage and compassion. It may not have been glamorous, but for countless stranded servicemen it was, honestly, the difference between terror and survival. These are the stories that remind us how human ingenuity rises in the face of danger, and, well, why we continue to study and preserve these forgotten achievements. If you enjoyed uncovering this piece of hidden history, make sure to subscribe to In the Beginning, share this video with fellow history enthusiasts, and help keep these stories alive. Every discovery, no matter how small, tells us something vital about the people who refused to give up, even when surrounded by an endless sea.